Hi, Sam here for LickLibrary.com. LickLibrary have asked me to talk about my top 5 legato tips. I've been very fortunate to learn from some amazing legato players. Tom Quayle has been a massive influence on my own playing, and some of these tips are kind of similar to some of the stuff that Tom might say, so do check out some of his awesome courses here at LickLibrary.com. However, the 5 tips I'm going to share are things that I've particularly found quite dynamite in my own legato experience, in terms of they really cut through to some really important things to work on, which made a big difference in my own personal playing. So without further ado, here is tip number 1. So tip number 1 is all about timing and subdivisions. It's kind of 2 tips for 1. So timing and subdivisions is really important. Whatever you're doing with legato, you're picking a note and then hammering on, or you're picking a note and then pulling off. If the fingers aren't doing the right thing at the right time, it's going to sound either rushed or messy, and it's a bit like a car. If you have, I don't know anything about cars because I'm a guitar player, but I understand there's some pistons and they've all got to be firing at different times in order for the car to move smoothly, and if there's any kind of discrepancy in the timing of those pistons, the car just doesn't work or blows up or something. I have no idea. Guitarist, remember, guitarist. So making sure, let's say we have a little legato, run, which just goes like this. 2, 3, 5 on the A string there, that when you play 2, the second finger falls down at an even time, and the same goes for 5 there, so you've got a nice even momentum. And whatever subdivision, that means the timing. So if it's like 8th notes, which is like 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and making sure that you're really on the ball with that. Especially lots of legato has these 3-note per string patterns. It's quite easy to play the rhythm of the pattern. So if it's a 3-note per string fragment like this, then it's quite simple to go, which is cool for effect, but sometimes we want to go for something smoother. So practicing of your subdivisions at the forefront of your mind is going to really help iron out your legato playing. Tip number 2, it's all about thumbs and fingertips. One thing only recently that was pointed out to me by fellow legato virtuoso David Beebe is he watched a video of me on Instagram, and there's a lick that I was sharing that I had a problem with, and he noticed my thumb. And that's weird because your thumb's the one that's behind the neck, and actually my thumb was dragging a little bit. When I was doing a position shift, when I was moving from, maybe, let's say I did a line like this, that's an exaggeration, but going 3, 5, 7 on the E, and then 7, 8, 10 on the low E, my thumb was getting caught behind. It was like down here when my fingers were up here. So making sure your thumb kind of moves up. And one thing I noticed was that I was kind of getting stuck with the thumb. I was pressing a little bit too hard. So if you relax your thumb a little bit and let it move along with your hand, that would be good. And then keeping your thumb sort of in behind where the middle or the third finger is, not in terms of where you are horizontally, but as in just vertically, that you've got that placement roughly there. So it's kind of hidden behind that middle finger. The other side of this is making sure that you're on your fingertips as much as possible, not so that your wrist is coming around too far, but just so you have a nice clean note. It's easier to do legato with that kind of thing rather than with your thumb over, which is good for other styles of playing and other things, but for this kind of thumb over, the hand collapses. So having the thumb behind is going to get you a bit more span and a bit more power behind your hammer-ons and pull-offs. So going off the last tip, tip number 3 is more about the actual motion of hammers and pulls. Now, we don't want to be over the top with our pull-offs. We don't want to be pulling off so hard that the string goes out of tune like this, because otherwise that's going to sound a bit hard, and it means you're probably pushing too much. Going back to tip number 1, it's all about controlling the timing. So just practicing how little that you need to actually flick the string on the pull off. And the same goes for the hammer on. Just make sure that the tension's kind of just right in the middle there, finding good balance, rather than over exerting or over pulling off. It's all about that kind of balance, and what you're looking for is the ability to keep the power going through the line, because if you've got something quite long, maybe something like this. I'll see if I can improvise a phrase. Okay, so towards the end I started to run out of a bit of steam, and maybe that was because at certain points I was probably overexerting. So be sure to kind of even that out as much as you can at first. So tip number 4 is to mix it up. So with legato, especially when we're starting out playing legato, there's lots of lines that use repeating fragments. And that's really cool. But what I would suggest trying out sooner rather than later is to mix up different hammer-on and pull-off combinations on each string. So let's say you do a hammer-on on the D string, 4, 5 and 7. On the G you might want to try something different. So that was 4, 5, 4, 5, 7. Then I might do something... Okay, that's sounding very kind of Christmassy here, but... So that was going 5, 8, 7, 5, and then 7 on the G. So coming up with your own lines and combining different legato fragments is a really helpful thing to do to get your lines sounding a little bit more interesting. So tip number 5 is all about watching your index finger slides. A lot of Satriani style legato will use things like this. So if I play that faster, we have a position shift slide. So you might have what's known as a roll on one of the fragments of 3 notes per string. Back off to that index finger, then position shift slide. Now what can happen there, and this is again something that was pointed out to me in my own playing, was that the slide sometimes wasn't in time, or it was dragging, or it wasn't kind of placed well enough so that there was like a kind of gap in the phrase. So making sure that your slides are accounted for as you're practicing your legato licks is a really good thing to be aware of. Okay, so I hope those are very helpful for you in your legato practice. Those are my 5 top tips for legato. We'll see you soon at LickLibrary.com. Thank you.